He almost didn't go. The rain was slamming against the windshield, his son was asleep in the back seat with tear-stained cheeks, and the weight of a lie pressed against his ribs like a stone. It was never supposed to be his night. It was his brother's name on the reservation, his brother's photos on the dating app, his brother's chance at starting over. But as he stared at the glowing sign of the little Italian restaurant across the street, Daniel Carter realized that sometimes life forces you to step into someone else's place just to discover where you truly belong. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet miracles that change ordinary lives, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Daniel hadn't planned to become a single father at 32. 3 years earlier, he had been just another exhausted husband trying to make ends meet, juggling construction jobs while his wife, Amelia, chased her dream of becoming a travel photographer. But dreams don't always survive reality. When Amelia received an offer to work overseas, she left with promises to call every day. The calls became weekly, then monthly, then silence. One day, a thin envelope arrived with divorce papers and a brief apology. Daniel had stood in the kitchen, their son Lucas clutching his leg, and felt something inside him crack open and spill out. From that day forward, Daniel lived in survival mode. He worked double shifts, learned how to braid tiny shoelaces, how to cook dinosaur-shaped pancakes, how to soothe nightmares that woke Lucas screaming for a mother who no longer answered. Every night, after Lucas finally fell asleep, Daniel would sit alone on the couch, staring at the blank television screen, wondering how love could evaporate so completely. The loneliness was heavy, but he carried it quietly. He told himself his heart was no longer part of the plan. His younger brother, Michael Carter, was the opposite. Charming, carefree, a marketing executive with perfectly styled hair and a smile that seemed permanently attached. Michael believed in love like it was an adventure waiting to happen. He had recently matched with someone named Olivia Harper on a blind date set up through mutual friends. She was described as intelligent, reserved, with a love for literature and rainy evenings. Michael had shown Daniel her picture one night, teasing him about settling down before he did. Daniel had shrugged it off, too tired to imagine himself across a candlelit table from anyone. But on the night of the date, Michael called in a panic. He had been offered a last-minute business trip to New York that could secure a promotion he had been chasing for months. He begged Daniel to cancel for him, but Olivia had already confirmed the reservation and rearranged her schedule. "Just show up," Michael insisted. "Explain it, apologize. Don't let her sit there alone." Daniel resisted, but something in his brother's voice made him agree. He promised to step in briefly, to clear up the misunderstanding, and leave. Lucas had been cranky that evening, refusing to sleep after a nightmare. Daniel couldn't find a babysitter on such short notice, so he strapped his son into the back seat, hoping the drive would lull him to sleep. It did, eventually, and so there Daniel was, rain pouring down, his sleeping son in the car, and a date meant for someone else waiting inside. The restaurant glowed with warm amber lights, laughter spilling through its doors. Daniel felt out of place in his worn jacket and scuffed shoes. He spotted her immediately. Olivia Harper sat alone near the window, her dark hair pulled back loosely, a book resting beside her untouched glass of water. She didn't look impatient. She looked thoughtful, almost fragile, like someone who had learned not to expect too much. Daniel approached the table with an awkward explanation. He told her his name wasn't Michael, that he was his older brother, that circumstances had shifted unexpectedly. He apologized more times than he could count. He expected irritation, maybe anger. Instead, Olivia listened quietly, her eyes steady, as if measuring the sincerity behind his words rather than the mistake itself. She surprised him by asking him to sit down anyway. She said she had already arranged a babysitter for her own evening responsibilities and didn't feel like going home yet. The way she said it carried a weight Daniel didn't fully understand. So he sat. They talked hesitantly at first. Daniel admitted he was a single father. He mentioned Lucas, the construction job, the exhaustion. He didn't paint himself as heroic. He spoke plainly about burned dinners and missed school events and the guilt that followed him everywhere. Olivia listened in a way that made him feel seen rather than judged. Midway through the evening, Daniel's phone buzzed with a notification from the baby monitor app he had set up in the car. Panic surged through him as he realized Lucas might have woken up. He confessed the truth to Olivia. His son was asleep in the back seat outside. Shame flushed his face as he admitted he hadn't wanted to cancel. He expected her to stand up and leave. Instead, Olivia leaned back slowly, her fingers wrapped around her glass, and asked the quiet question that changed everything. She asked why he kept punishing himself for surviving. The question stunned him. No one had ever framed his life that way. He blinked at her, unsure how to respond. She continued softly, not accusing, not pitying, just observing. She said he spoke about himself like a man who had failed, yet all she heard was someone who had stayed when leaving would have been easier. Someone who chose bedtime stories over bars, responsibility over escape. Her words sliced through the armor he had built. For the first time in years, Daniel felt tears sting his eyes in public. He realized he had been carrying a silent narrative that he wasn't enough, that Amelia had left because he lacked something essential. Olivia's question forced him to reconsider that story. They walked out together into the rain to check on Lucas. Olivia stood quietly as Daniel opened the car door and lifted his sleepy son into his arms. Lucas stirred, his tiny hand clutching Daniel's collar. Olivia's gaze softened in a way that made Daniel's chest tighten. She didn't see inconvenience. She saw love. Over the next few weeks, what began as a misunderstanding evolved into something steady and deliberate. Olivia turned out to be a middle school English teacher who had postponed her own dreams to care for her mother during a long illness. She understood sacrifice in ways most people did not. She began meeting Daniel and Lucas at the park on Sunday afternoons. She brought books for Lucas, kneeling beside him in the grass, reading stories with animated expressions that made him giggle uncontrollably. Daniel struggled with guilt. He worried he was betraying his past, that moving forward meant erasing Amelia entirely. He worried about introducing Lucas to someone new, about risking another heartbreak. There were nights he almost canceled their plans, convinced he was not built for happiness anymore. But Olivia's presence was patient. She never pushed. She simply remained. One evening, months later, Lucas fell asleep on Olivia's shoulder while they were watching a movie at Daniel's apartment. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching them, feeling something unfamiliar bloom in his chest. It wasn't the wild, reckless passion he once believed love had to be. It was quieter, steadier. It felt like coming home. Michael returned from New York eventually, curious about the woman he had missed meeting. When Daniel told him the truth, expecting resentment, Michael surprised him with a grin. He said maybe the universe knew which brother needed her more. For once, there was no competition between them, only relief. But the real turning point came a year after that rainy night. Daniel had been offered a promotion to site supervisor, a role that required more hours and more stress. The old fear resurfaced, that he would fail again, that he couldn't balance love and responsibility. He almost declined the offer. It was Olivia who reminded him of her question from their first date. She asked him gently whether he was punishing himself again for surviving. Daniel accepted the promotion. Life didn't become perfect overnight. There were still hard mornings, bills that stretched thin, moments of doubt. But now, when Daniel looked in the mirror, he didn't see a man abandoned. He saw a father who stayed. A man who stepped into a blind date by accident and stepped into a second chance by choice. Years later, on another rainy evening, Daniel proposed to Olivia in that same little restaurant. Lucas, now taller and braver, held the ring box with trembling hands. Olivia said yes with tears streaming down her face, and Daniel felt the final remnants of his old shame dissolve. Sometimes he thought back to that night in the car, to the rain and the doubt and the feeling that he was living someone else's life. If he had driven away, if he had chosen comfort over courage, he would have missed the quiet question that rewrote his story. If this story has touched your heart so far, take a moment to engage with this video. Like it, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and let us know your thoughts below. Your interaction helps these stories reach people who may be waiting for hope. And before we reach the end, I want to ask you something special. Comment the word "stay" if you believe that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is remain present when life gets hard. Because in the end, Daniel realized that love doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it comes disguised as a mistake, as rain against a windshield, as a quiet woman asking a question no one else dared to ask. And sometimes, all it takes to change everything is the courage to answer.